Ausgestattete Schulen, gesunde Kinder und so weiter entsteht nicht dadurch, dass wir solche Papierschnitzel drucken, sondern das entsteht durch Blut, Schweiß und Tränen.
Wir leben inzwischen in einem Feudalismus.
Today we're living in a feudal system, which is based on law and legalized by it, so everything that's happening here is quite legal. Many people work for the benefit of few, very few.
Arbeiten für das Wohl von wenigen, sehr, sehr wenigen.
Alles soll privatisiert werden, wir müssen das Produktivitätsniveau noch weiter steigern. Es gibt für alles sozusagen ein Optimum und wenn man über das Optimum hinausgeht, dann ist man zu weit gegangen.
A child that dies of starvation today is being killed. There is no reason for dying. It's the world order which kills, and not the fact of privatation.
Ich wäre ja so froh, wir hätten Zeit, denn vermutlich brauchen wir Deutschen für die Reform viel Zeit. Wir haben keine Zeit. Das Fenster schließt sich.
Es kann keinen Christen und kein
It has to bother anyone with religious feelings that the main part of mankind is not satisfied in their basic needs, while economy is as successful as never before.
nicht einmal in den Grundbedürfnissen zufriedengestellt wird, obwohl die Wirtschaft so erfolgreich wie noch nie ist.
I believe, with or without climate change, a global recession of money is possible. There are enough problems in the world which make such a scenario possible. We're standing on the edge of time. The destruction of the feudal world system, the rise of republic, of a free mankind, the enlightenment of people as the unique subject of their own history. That's not just a new chapter of world evolution, that's a turning point.
Das ist nicht einfach ein neues evolutives Kapitel in der Weltgeschichte, das ist ein Bruch.
Das Los der Menschheit verbessern. Letztlich muss das unser Ansporn und unser
Improving
Maßstab
destiny
sein.
of mankind.
An dieser Stelle
This has to
schließt
be
sich
our
für mich
motivation
der
and our
Kreis
standard.
zwischen Ökonomie
There's a connection here
und
between economy
demokratischer
and democratic politics.
Beide
Both are
sind
referring
dem
to the
gleichen
same
Ziel
goal,
verpflichtet
and this goal
und
is
dieses Ziel
mankind.
ist, und ich sage es nochmal, bleibt der Mensch.
Mankind is doing well. If we believe Nobel laureate Robert Fogel, we're moving toward an age of wealth and long life expectancy. Nobel laureate Clive Granger says, "The world economy is as safe as ever. Climate shocks or financial shocks can be taken much more lightly today. Even wars are cheaper today and do not cause financial lack." At a meeting of Nobel laureates in Lindau, Germany, there were also more critical opinions. Douglas North is convinced that profit falls only to an elite, that a free market economy can exist only once government has secured the principles of democracy. In Geneva, people hope for more democracy. The Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights stores embarrassing figures. 20% of humans receive 82.7% of the world's income. The world belongs to just a few people, and this causes problems. A fraction of the 225 richest persons' wealth would guarantee healthy nutrition for everybody in the world. But the money does not return. Instead of this, the gap between rich and poor is growing. Also in Germany. According to the Federal Department of Statistics, 10% of Germans possess almost half of the entire private capital. Half of the population shares a small part, 4%.
Wer beherrscht die Welt? Das ist ganz sicher
Who's ruling the world?
die Oligarchie.
This is, of course, the oligarchy of the international financial capital. Last year's World Bank statistics stated the following facts. The 500 biggest, most powerful international, meaning transnational companies, the 500 biggest have controlled 52% of the world's gross product. World gross product contains the whole fortune of the world, which has been produced in 1 year.
The German welfare state strives for a just dispersion of wealth by taxing the wealthy more than the rest of the population. While neighboring countries tax their populations at flat rates, wealthy Germans face up to a 70% tax rate. They are financing an economy in which 41% of voters receive some kind of federal aid. But conditions are still absurd. If the 300 richest Germans put together their wealth and founded a common state, their national budget would exceed that of the whole Federal Republic of Germany. Compared to other countries, this is a shining example of equity in the distribution of wealth. The Gini index measures global injustice on a scale from 0 to 100. The closer it goes to 100, the bigger the gap between rich and poor. Germany scores an admirable 28. In the future, conditions will worsen to match the global index of 66. Never before in the history of mankind has the gap between rich and poor been so pronounced. Scientists blame money. We think that we know what money is because we deal with it on a daily basis. But scientists problematize our vernacular concept of money. The popular understanding of the history of money is that money is a medium of exchange that replaced bartering with natural materials like shells, salt, or livestock. But this understanding is wrong.
Money is a medium of covering debt. It is not a medium of exchange. It is not necessary to have such a medium, because in no known form of society there has been an exchange, and definitely not in our society, which I see as the society of property.
Und schon gar nicht in unserer, die ich als Eigentumsgesellschaft bezeichne.
Money arises inevitably from a society of private property. Money is a bill of debt for the right to private property. Economist Otto Steiger says that money destroys social networks. Scholars view Steiger's theory as the first serious theory of money in the history of political economics. Economic textbooks must be revised to conform to the theory. Current texts are wrong.
Sie können sich jedes beliebige Lehrbuch
You can look it up in any history book. It starts with the ownership of resources and wants to show how property is mixed in a new optimal way for every individual by exchanging it with others. And paradoxically, money does not occur in this system.
Indem man ihn mit anderen tauscht. Und in diesem System kommt seltsamerweise das Geld nicht vor.
How did money hide for centuries from the vigilant eyes of economists? What caused this blind spot in history? Only recently have we begun to realize the true nature of the magic tool, money. We're following the path of money through history in the Federal Bank's Money Museum. We find the first forms of money in primitive societies. Handling money has never been as easy as it is today. And older traditions appear unreasonable. The known history of money in Europe starts around 700 BC. These are the first coins ever found. The lion coins of King Croesus of Lydia. Croesus amasses exceptional wealth after his father invents currency. But as he dies, the empire also goes to ruin. During antiquity, local priests make coins deemed of equal value to an act of ritual sacrifice. In the same vein, the ancient Greeks substitute ritual killing of livestock for the sacrifice of their own lives to the god Dionysus. The metal bar on which the offering is presented to the god is cut up into small slices, which are then embossed with images of the gods. Since the age of the pharaohs, gold is an offering to the gods of the hereafter. This Greek ritual transports the god from beyond to the world of mankind and makes him tangible. Dionysus has accepted the human gift of blood, which has given him a mortal body. The coin, with its analogous mode of exchange, represents a connection to the gods. It promises fertility and allows the owner to enter the world of Hades in death. The monetary unit represents the value of an offering to the gods. The priests convert the sacrifice into material goods. In this way, the Greek gods are the first capitalists. Their temples are the oldest banks. During the War of Peloponnesia, the temple banks call themselves guardians of the treasure of the gods. The temple's power grows through the introduction of taxes. In the beginning, only strangers must pay taxes. Citizens borrow money from the temple banks. But if a citizen cannot pay back the money on time, he loses his property and becomes a slave for a period of 3 years.
Money means life to us poor, mortal people. With these words, the poet Hesiod describes his time.
In ancient Rome, citizens grind down gold coins in order to use the pure gold as an alternative currency. Because of this practice, Roman currency fails to acquire a stable reputation as a means of exchange. Also, the biggest bank of Rome must share its temple space with a gaggle of holy geese. By sanctifying its coins, the temple, Juno Moneta, creates confidence in its money. The money is a gift from femininity. But the male war power would lead the Roman cestars to success. Conquering Roman forces spread the idea of money aggressively throughout the world by forcing residents of newly colonized territories to use coins. The rise of trade with money bothers Jesus of Nazareth. He is angered by the material view of life promoted by the temple banks. Enraged, he drives the money dealers and changers from the temple. He throws their money on the ground.
Take these things hence. Make not my Father's house a house of merchandise.
For the first time in history, Jesus fights for a separation of money and religious belief, a revolutionary thought that decimates the priest's power. He asserts that money is a form of idolatry, an attack on the throne of God.
You cannot serve God and Mammon.
Mammon is unjustified profit, a Babylonian demon who seduces man to stinginess. It is clear that Jesus does not endorse banks that depend on interest margins.
If you'd like to give something to someone, give it to him who cannot give it back anyway.
asserts Lucas. To the Church, charging interest is a punishable crime until the 18th century. He who profits from interest will be refused Christian burial. But money prevails even among Christians. The kings and emperors of the Dark Age realized that a monopoly on the manufacture of money is the key to worldly power. Charlemagne averts economic disaster by reforming the currency. Popularly, money has a magical, infamous character. It's even said to have diabolical powers. But its social and political validity is enforced with an iron hand. A lack of faith in currency is regarded as a crime against the throne and is often punished by death. But the feudal lords abused their power as manufacturers of money and coined large amounts greedily. The money becomes worthless with brutal consequences for those who have been paid with it. The cities saved themselves from this crisis by limiting the lifetime of money. Coins are disreputated. They are collected and melted for subsequent circulation. He who misses this disreputation, maybe because of extended travel, suddenly finds little more than cheap metal in his purse. At this time, money tempts with worldly pleasures, but the systematic accumulation of money for its own sake is unknown. This kind of hoarding is seen as dishonorable and godless. At this time, the myth of Robin Hood arises. Robin's Hall would have looked like this. England's primary currency was a system of tally sticks, as the country lacked gold. The sticks consist of two conjoined parts, a credit stick and a debt stick. The King of England founds the federal bank by personally depositing such a stick. As this system became unmanageable, the king saw it fit to dispose of and burn all of the currency. The uncontrolled blaze from this disposal fire burnt Westminster Palace to the ground. Today, Big Ben stands on its remains. It is time for paper money. In Europe, it starts in the year 1483, almost 200 years after Marco Polo reports its Chinese invention. Ferdinand II of Spain advocates the adoption of paper money because he lacks the gold to pay Christopher Columbus for his expedition. Large trading houses give rise to major banks that circulate the new paper currency. The king leaves it up to the trading companies to consistently match paper money with treasures from afar. But even afar, one finds critiques of the monetary system. Bura Bayan, a Japanese philosopher of this time, calls those people who create money from money idlers. Bayan is still seen as one of Japan's great philosophers.
If there's a lot of money in use, a lot will be borrowed. If a little is borrowed, the power of money lessens and cannot fly away. If the power of money decreases, the essential things of life have to be saved. But if money runs short, money will be born out of money, and the spirit of money starts to fly again.
Like Bayan, the French economist Bois-Guilbert is convinced that the accumulation of uncirculating money leads to economic crisis.
To accumulate wealth, money's primary function should be that as a medium of exchange. But now it appears as a perpetual mobile that circulates throughout the organism of society and accumulates in this way true wealth. Meanwhile, money becomes an object of desire, regarding the chance of storing it and its potential of circulation. This seems to give money an air of holiness. Compared to other goods, it's privileged. Therefore, spirit of man turns into the spirit of money.
The government of Versailles exiles the liberal economist and bans his writings. The crisis arrives. The people protest the inequitable distribution of wealth and overthrow the monarchy. The people begin printing their own money. While the revolutionaries are busy founding the state, the bourgeois take advantage of the changes in government to attain a long-desired goal. They demand the right to private property and an end to the prohibition of interest. The republic capitulates. Critics are executed. Democracy fades. The trade houses and banks quickly become the new power of the nation. The Rothschilds and an elite banking class control the government via privately issued government loans. These loans have a dangerous side effect. The government pays interest by taxing the population and consequently supporting inequity. The calculation of interest is absurd. If Joseph would have opened a savings account with 1 cent at 5% interest upon the birth of Christ, and if the economy had been inflation-free, Joseph's descendants would have, in the year 1604, a fortune worth a golden globe the weight of the whole world at today's gold price. For a short moment in time, money finds its way into the hands of the people. But from the 18th century, the rule of private owners spreads across the world. The morally vacuous lucre of banks disgusts Napoleon. His current financial supporters previously financed the opposition.
The hand that gives is the hand that takes. Money has no home country. Investors have no patriotism and act without reserve. Their single aim is making profit.
The American President Andrew Jackson marches with the slogan, "I killed the bank," against the U.S. Federal Bank. But European investors boycott American investment. The powerful European financial nobility has already decided on a gory civil war for America.
The separation of the USA in two divisions was already decided by the financial power of Europe long before the Civil War, because America in one piece was financially too powerful.
To take revenge on European investors, legendary American banker J.P. Morgan, who married into the Rockefeller family, supports the Allies during the First World War with up to $10 million a day. A profitable business. America has learned from the Europeans. In this period, the neoclassical economists celebrated laissez-faire capitalism as a reasonable way to ensure the just distribution of wealth in society. Facing the omnipotence of money, the economist Silvio Gesell asks himself, how can we overcome money's function as a spreading medium of power without losing its role as a neutral medium of exchange? Gesell's ultimate ambition is an economy that lacks interfering business cycles and fosters a just social order. He sees a solution in a permanently circulating money that he calls free money. Because this currency would not depend on a physical analog, it won't go to waste or corrode. Therefore, value can be determined according to simple relationships to labor and natural products. Money will be servant to mankind and not its master.
Da hatte Gesell die Vorstellung, dass die einzelnen Länder ihre jeweiligen
Gesell's idea was that every nation keeps its currency, but joined to an international valuta association, which issues a neutral world currency based on the principles of the corroding banknotes. This world money should clear global imbalances in trade relations. His idea was that permanently circulating money would no longer have the structural power to accumulate interest and compound interest and concentrate fortune.
Nicht mehr die strukturelle Macht hat, sich in der bisherigen Weise durch Zins und Zinseszins grenzenlos zu vermehren und das Vermögen zu konzentrieren.
In 1932, just after the Great Depression, and 2 years after Gesell died, the Austrian municipality of Würgl starts an experiment. Facing poverty and a long list of construction plans, the mayor of Würgl tries Gesell's free money, but backs it with an equivalent amount of Austrian currency. Because the free money decreases in value at the end of each month, citizens have an incentive to spend the money periodically and a disincentive to save the money. This encourages both circulation and productivity. It had an amazing impact. Taxes were paid in advance, unemployment decreased by 25% in only 1 year, while it increased throughout the rest of Austria. All construction plans on the mayor's long list were realized. The free money of Würgl created swimming pools, bridges, and roads. After other villages imitate the experiment, the federal bank sees free money as a threat to its monopoly.
Das war, wenn man sich das so in der historischen Rückschau anguckt, wirklich eine tragische
In retrospect, that was truly a tragic decision. 170 Austrian municipalities and cities were about to follow the example of Würgl when the experiment had to be abandoned on an official order. Only a few years later, the Nazis marched into Austria. Just as tragic as this was, the experiment with the Vera was prohibited in Germany in the autumn of 1931, and then in 1933 in Austria as well. And in both cases, in both countries, totalitarian politics came into power. In retrospect, one might wonder if those experiments had had the opportunity to spread, might they have prevented the evils of the Nazi regime and the war?
Hätte beitragen können, dieses große Leid der NS-Diktatur und des Krieges zu verhüten.
The American economist Irving Fisher hears of the Würgl experiment and recommends the system to Roosevelt to fight the Depression. Fisher incites a vivid debate in Congress. Nevertheless, the president decides against a national free money. Roosevelt hopes to stabilize the dollar through financial support and a federal monopoly on gold holdings. As in Germany, the Depression is convenient for the industrialists. Steel tycoon Thyssen takes advantage of it to gain control over his workers by eliminating unions. Soon after, the change to a war economy restarts the industrialist cash flow to international financiers who, once again, fund both parties. During the Second World War, the collective debt of warring countries quintuples. The free money of Gesell remains unimplemented, a courageous experiment at dethroning money. Nevertheless, the creation of an international monetary union becomes a reality at the Bretton Woods Conference in 1944. John Maynard Keynes, who sympathized with Gesell's ideas, was not pleased with the conference's outcome.
Keynes
wanted to put both under pressure, creditors as well as debtors, to prompt them to balance their external relations. And that's something completely different from what was decided at the 1944 Bretton Woods Conference and put into action after 1945. Namely, appointing the dollar international lead currency, and that is what we have seen in the last 20 to 30 years. Structural adjustment programs have been imposed only on so many indebted southern countries.
Strukturanpassungsprogramme auferlegt bekommen haben.
America sets forth its political mindset in White Paper PPS-23, authored by George Kennan, the chief of the U.S. State Department Policy Planning Staff.
Furthermore, we have about 50% of the world's wealth, but only 6.3% of its population. In this situation, we cannot fail to be the object of envy and resentment. Our real task in the coming period is to devise a pattern of relationships which will permit us to maintain this position of disparity. To do so, we will have to dispense with all sentimentality and daydreaming, and our attention will have to be concentrated everywhere on our immediate national objectives. We should cease to talk about vague and, for the Far East, unreal objectives such as human rights, the raising of living standards, and democratization. The day is not far off when we are going to have to deal in straight power concepts. The less we are then hampered by idealistic slogans, the better.
And that day was to come. After President Richard Nixon sells Roosevelt's Fort Knox gold reserve to Europe at a discounted price, he revokes America's commitment to cash gold. Despite American bankruptcy, the dollar establishes itself as lead currency under the protection of the World Bank and the IMF. The unsecured cash flow made the developed nations boom, a contradictory miracle. Milton Friedman disproves Keynes and creates the now pervasive theory that the market can right itself without governmental control. With the abolition of the gold standard, money detaches itself from physical material and becomes abstract. Economists respond by attempting to measure the money's worth according to gross domestic product, but this is not an accurate physical analogy. Today, money is backed only by itself. Paper money, too, is a relic of the past. Right now, only 5% of the world's money is banknotes and coins. Money has become a digital number that dwells only in bank computers. When the people here whisper about these numbers, it has the air of a Christian confession. The coveted rise of the bank balance resembles a profession of faith. This profession inheres in money. The word credit derives from Latin, credo, I believe. To Jochen Weiss, money functions like a religion. The philosopher has proven this. Today, we think that money is neutral because it appeals to the mind and appears to be logical. But our money has socially constructed moral laws and myths. Money can be anything. It can change into every kind of service, every human invention. And every tree, every stone can suddenly turn back into money, a godly potency. Money tells only one truth, namely that of its owner. To him, 10 euro are not just 10 euro, but the fulfillment of his personal values. With money, people can get their way. It lends them supernatural powers. But changing the owner also changes the meaning of the notes. The numbers become chaotic and capricious. To be able to do and possess anything with one's money is the nirvana in which the world lies at one's feet and everybody feels safe. Every expense threatens this state. Because money incorporates the hopes and dreams of every single human, the whole of money represents the beliefs of all mankind. Money is an omnipotence that shakes God's throne. Both money and God demand unquestioning faith. Without faith, the note would only be a piece of paper. The spirit of the money has mixed, over the centuries, with Christianity. All of us are indebted, but man can't redeem himself. Jesus promised deliverance in this world. money keeps that promise. Religious values and morals become expendable by and by. Money is a virus that imitates and finally replaces religion.
Religion nährt sich vom Überschüssigen.
Religion feeds on surplus, that which goes beyond the necessary. What was sacrificed on the altars of antiquity was that which was not needed for subsistence, mostly fat and bones. This leads seamlessly to the temple tax, which financed priests and was continued in the selling of indulgences. The entrepreneur also pockets the surplus by adding a, as Marx calls it, surplus value to the costs of material and wages of a production. Marx calls that, appropriately according to the Christian course of the week, the dominical. That is the surplus. Thereby, the entrepreneur becomes the modern priest. He also becomes priest because he enables the workers to participate in the community of believers. The signing of the work contract becomes the modern christening. And Jean Baudrillard continues, the wages become the monthly given sacrament, until the pension, which is the administering of the last rites, bit by bit.
The spirit of money reflects our belief. Everyone has to repay his credit alone. The highest goal in life is an absolute devotion to work. Just like Christianity, money demands an unsolicited sacrifice. Christ sacrificed himself for the community, and the same is expected from salary earners today. The bank account registers our every movement and determines what is allowed and what is forbidden. The deadliest sin is indulgence. Unnecessary expenses are bad. Money demands ascetic economy. Just as totem animals are worshipped in everyday life but eaten on holidays, our society reveres, collects, and saves money until it is sacrificed on public holidays. Money demands a sacrifice. It is the Germanic word for to sacrifice. To sell derives from the Gothic salja, which means to offer a gory human sacrifice on the altar of the gods. Man is for sale. But he regards this as his luck rather than his nightmare. To man, wealth is not a shame. Rather, the rich are the adornments and role models of society. Many who have come from a poor background have fought hard for years to gather wealth. Celebrities show us that anyone in our society can make himself a supernatural and carefree existence if only he believes strongly. In the last 10 years, there has been talk of a global economic crisis, yet the number of billionaires worldwide has risen from 423 to 793.
Rocketing to number 6 is Mr. Las Vegas, Sheldon Adelson, the American king of casinos with $26.5 billion. Still in 5th place is the Indian steel king Lakshmi Mittal with $32 billion. Number 4, Love Your Home, says Ingvar Kamprad and took home $33 billion with IKEA, enough for a lovely home. Number 3, Warren Buffett, he piled up $52 billion through investments. No longer number 1, Microsoft founder Bill Gates with $56 billion. Now border crossing, Mr. Carlos Slim Helu from Mexico. He could gain another $19 billion through phone calls, now calling himself the richest man of the world. And now the lottery results.
Those who have no entrepreneurial success may nevertheless believe in their luck. Fortune keeps up the just appearance of money. Deliverance is provided daily.
100.000 Euro sind noch im Spiel.
There is still €100,000 in the game, and there is only one suitcase left.
Ich nehme die 20.
I choose number 20. And this is Brigitte zu Hohenlohe from Rattenkirchen. The fact that you have made it onto this chair already secures you 5,000 euro. Let's call it salutary money.
Not everybody is allowed to win. But today, you can't make your dreams come true by honest work alone. Lawyer Harold Wozniewski once calculated that we each would have to work 40 years at an hourly wage of 451,000 euro to catch up to the current wealth of the richest German.
Wir leben in einem großen Monopoly-Spiel. Und das Ende von Monopoly.
We live in a giant game of Monopoly, and we all know the end of Monopoly. One has everything, while the rest is bankrupt. And that is exactly what happens in an ordinary monetized economy like ours. Think about it. What rule do you need to introduce to prevent this catastrophe? Do you have an idea? So far, I only have one idea that would work permanently. Everyone is only allowed to have possession of streets and houses up to a specific worth. He would not be allowed to buy more. If he somehow gets more, i.e., profit-making assets, he may have as much money as he likes for all I care. Then you would get a lasting gain. The game would never end. The game would bore people to death. But for reality, it would be an excellent solution.
Ja? Aber für unsere Realität wäre es eine prima Lösung.
Bei 6.438. Die Stimmung bleibt nach wie vor gut, aber das Ganze
This time, again, the DAX ended the day up on the highest level.
But the game gets rougher. The global players don't laze around waiting for investment returns, as you might expect at the Frankfurt Stock Exchange. Stockholders crack the whip at companies to ensure efficiency rises. The rich of the world are lining up for the best fund managers. The American proto-locust Henry Kravis has annual rates of return of 50% and doubles billions within a year. Steven Schwartzman brought in returns of 70% with friendly takeovers at the beginning of the millennium. David Rubenstein caused rumors of a secret world leadership. Both Bush administrations were on his payroll, while his fund profited from the war on terror. Right now, venture capitalists are the kings of capital. The heart of our society is a millionaire factory. Venture capitalists use debt-burdened money to hunt companies and saddle them with debt. After the buyout, they withdraw their venture. Investors shift multi-million management charges to the companies as they close them down. Companies circulate faster and faster at market, and the number of bonds with a high chance of failure nears an all-time high. But the old-school funds are running out of good deals. The old, ineffective big groups are almost completely shattered. Additional attacks now come from hedge funds that stage public stock offerings to sell underrated companies. They also buy debt to put companies under pressure. And that's why today there are piles of money to defend debt from buyouts, an absurd money machine that's getting more and more aggressive. The world market adapts to the money. A futile cycle in which companies produce one single product, more money. For years, Elmar Altvater has warned against blind belief in growth.
Man muss sich ja mal vor Augen führen,
We have to see that these high rates of growth, 3, 4, 5%, or as in China 10%, this is an absolute exception to the history of mankind. The rates for growth have always been, during the whole history of mankind, at 0 or a little above. Sometimes there has also been a process of shrinking and reductions of population, sometimes even catastrophes. But today, we think that those high rates are common, and this normality, this capitalism, won't last.
The motor of growth pumps money out of regions, draining public budgets. We only promote technologies for mass production, technologies that encourage a giant monoculture that benefits only a few. The means of production are the key to wealth. More and more, scientists hope to make new technologies affordable for the average Joe. Small-scale technologies from which more people may profit.
Wir sind dabei, unsere Identität
We're losing our identity. I'm not talking about work or jobs.
On
each of the world markets, there are only 3 to 6 suppliers of the big streams of goods. We have reached a degree of monopolization and monotony of products that is contrary to the recipes of success for evolutionary diversity. And that is where we too have to start to introduce a new understanding of diversity into economy, in contrast to the ruling monotony.
Gegenüber ihrer Monotonie, die heute vorherrschenden Charakter hat, hineinzubringen.
Because human labor loses in value, Professor Geist Werner from Karlsruhe is looking for new solutions. He has started the debate about a basic income. What if everybody had enough money to stop worrying about survival?
Es ist eine normative Frage, eine Frage unserer Kultur, eine Frage unserer Mitmenschlichkeit.
This is a normative question, a question of culture, a question of compassion. If we want to grant this our fellow men, it is not a question of economics. Do we want to grant our fellow men participation in what society has built up collectively over generations?
Geist Werner wants to free people from economic dependence. Up to 1,500 euros should be paid unconditionally to every citizen, an idea that seems realistic, given that Germany spends about 685 billion in social security benefits.
Don't worry about the politicians. When politicians realize that the minds of the sovereign, meaning every single one of you, that the wind is changing, then you will see how fast politicians will overtake you on all sides.
How will Germany look, according to Geist Werner, if we do not embrace a basic income?
More and more people will become dependent. Our concerns, based on our constitution, e.g., unhindered mobility, free choice of labor, dignity of man, these will only be met unsatisfactorily.
Sadly, freedom and human dignity are Greek to the young CEOs from elite schools. These young alchemists are under pressure to succeed. But instead of gold, they are expected to work miracles like Windows or Google. Unequal chances in life are regarded as a necessary evil.
We have to say goodbye to the idea that there's a possibility of equal living conditions in Germany and all of Europe. We have to say goodbye to this fiction, which has never become reality.
While the industrialized nations say goodbye to equal chances in life, that hope has already been abandoned elsewhere. Although there are record profits, poverty increases. While East Asia now has 140 million fewer poor, in Africa, South Asia, Latin America, and the former socialist countries, there are 159 million newly impoverished. Today, half of mankind suffers poverty. 1/5 lives in absolute poverty, on less than $1 a day. Jean Ziegler, special correspondent to the United Nations, perceives money as a political weapon. Corruption, exploitation, and misery are realities to the people of the Third World. Their human rights are trampled underfoot because these countries are at the mercy of their creditors. They are forced to privatize their profit-making companies and open their markets to the global players, who are committed only to their own profits, to a vicious cycle of poverty and debt.
If the neoliberal jungle, predatory capitalism, which up to now devastates parts of the Third World, those parts of the Third World rich in natural resources are totally devastated, covered with dictatorial satellite regimes. Saudi Arabia is a mere mercenary monarchy of American financial capital. The denying of human rights, this starting up of proxy wars wherever there are diamonds, oil, or gold to grab. Today, the Third World suffers from this predatory capitalism and the political and social consequences it brought along. But we here in Europe also do. Slowly the jungle crosses the seas. Not only because every day thousands of people flee and often even drown, not only in the Atlantic off the American coast, in front of the Canaries, they're sent back at the Strait of Gibraltar, and at the eastern borders of Europe, miserably suffering in camps for years. Or working as slaves in the underground. Women forced into prostitution, more than 550,000 in Western Europe, according to EU statistics. This jungle of predatory capitalism expands, now even into the very old, democratic, civilized societies of Western Europe.
So genannt sind es tatsächlich noch demokratischen, zivilisierten, uralten Gesellschaften Westeuropas.
For 250 years, a little more, we in Europe and many people in the world have lived under republican constitutions, with the values of solidarity and social justice, the values of the Enlightenment, the institutions of human rights, and so on. This type of society is in deadly peril today.
Bernard Liete of the Central Bank of Belgium is one of the founding fathers of the euro. He too believes that money contributes to poverty.
I believe that the kind of monetary system that we have actually creates poverty. There are defects and possibilities in any currency, including our national money. For example, today it is unstable, it is socially regressive, it has created many of the messes that we're in, including the short-term thinking that motivates corporations to think short-term and therefore make decisions that are not sustainable in the long run.
Short-term thinking still promises the highest returns. This is a disadvantage for the creation of renewable energies and environmental protection, which demand far-sightedness. The Institute for World Economics in Kiel engages this problem. The financial market tries perpetually to create new incentives, but the discount rates against which future income and exports are measured lead hope to nonsense. Environmental protections fail because of financial problems.
How important these emissions are depends partly on our discount rate and partly on what we call equate weighting. This means the worth of a life in a developing country compared to the worth of a life in a developed country. This is really explosive. These two things, if the discount rate is, for example, at 3.4% a year, then it is only our generation that is of importance, and future generations are of almost no importance. And then the whole environmental problem is not seen seriously. In economy, we use such discount rates, but then we don't care about future generations. And this is ethically wrong.
Und das ist moralisch verfehlt.
What is the worth of a human life? Money is the value system by which humans make decisions of life and death.
Seit Ende des Kalten Krieges, glaube ich,
Since the end of the Cold War, social injustice and disharmony are on the rise. Wars and ethnic conflicts have grown in number. There is a trend to just look at one's family, at one's country, and to ignore the rest of mankind. Nowadays, this may have tragic consequences. We need a change of mind, of all the people, of the whole world.
Und das kann ganz tragische Folgen haben heutzutage.
Die Erwärmung der Erde nimmt an Tempo zu.
Global warming is gaining speed. If we don't change now, stop burning oil, coal and gas, and turn to renewable energies, we play games with our planet. Then we risk a tip over of lots of ecosystems. Then we create 100 to 200 million climate refugees. People who have to leave their home countries because of expanding drought, very heavy rain, or rising sea level.
Oder vom Anstieg des Meeresspiegels in ihrer Heimat nicht mehr leben können.
What is the worth of nature? Nature that we may never see with our own eyes. We have to change, demand scientists from all over the world. At the symposium in Potsdam, they wrote a common memorandum to the public. Scientists are demanding that economy must discard the material mechanic view. In all other disciplines, there is already a modern idea of neutral exchange.
The old principles of centralistic control, violent takeover of the other, ruthless aims, which classic physics has practiced successfully with the inanimate, rule the image of humankind. The conflicts on distribution of wealth affect in a bad way the human community and their chance to develop. The old-fashioned ideas of fight and competition should be replaced by a modern idea of cooperation and symbiosis. If this happens, economy can be changed.
Economy has to serve life. The churches demand a change. They have sent a global call to recognize economic injustice and the destruction of nature. At the World Meeting of Churches in Porto Alegre, they declared together, "The free market is a myth." They demand a remission of debt and an end to forced privatization in third world countries. Investments should flow only to companies who stand for ecologic justice and who create humane working conditions. Regarding the current balance of power, the question presents itself, does mankind as a whole need to change first, or should the few rich people realize the problem by themselves? One of the richest men in the world, Warren Buffett, set an example in 2006. Surprisingly, he declared that he wants to give 37 of his $52 billion to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Bill Gates' statement. We and many other rich people want to give something back to society. The Gates Foundation is the biggest welfare organization of the world.
Is that the one on the...
We're saving millions of lives. It's amazing.
Thank you, sir.
These billions should be paid for inoculations and development aid. Does this gift help save the world from suffering?
A child
that survives belongs to a different worldview. But the problem is not solved. Mr. Gates and Warren Buffett, and also the World Food Program, if we want to stay with starvation, do not solve the problem, only cause new ones. We're confronted with structural violence. It's not about giving more to the people in the third world. It's about stealing less from them.
Ultimately, the money is used to pay off creditors and not for social benefits. All in all, the global amount of $400 trillion of debt faces an income of $40 trillion. Countries receive loans from the financial market. Creditors are banks, companies, or private persons. The loans affect political relationships between countries. For example, President Bush gets chummy with Chancellor Merkel because German creditors are waiting for their money. Loans are collected with a strong hand, even if this takes decades. Germany and France face proceedings for having borrowed more money than they are allowed. The German government is $1,500 billion in the red.
Ich glaube, dass den meisten Bürgern gar nicht klar ist, wie das in der Praxis funktioniert.
I believe that most citizens don't know how this works. The government has risen extremely high loans, which are now due. Every month, billions have to be paid for loans that run 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, or even 10 years, and which are due now. But the government can't pay because it has no budget surplus. On the contrary, every year new debts are accumulating. Because of this, the government rises huge loans every month to pay the old. There is no repayment, and this means that the government is extremely dependent on creditors at home and in foreign countries. Every month, it has to convince these creditors that in 5, 10, or in 15 years, it will still be able to pay the money back. And this means that public budgets are extremely tensed up, and have to look how the capital market might react now to their political decisions.
Wenn Sie dafür übrigens dann auch noch Wettbewerbsstärkungsgesetze nennen, dann meine ich, ist das ein Wettbewerbsverständnis, das Sie vielleicht bei den Jusos oder beim KGB gelernt haben, aber mit sozialer Marktwirtschaft hat das nichts zu tun.
How can we trust politics when politics are dependent on money? Everybody knows that the voice of money is louder than the individual voice of democracy. It has to be paid, because indebtedness harms the stability of currency. Money has become safer, but the list of crises is long. All in all, 87 countries have seen an extreme devaluation of their currency since 1975. The reasons for these crashes are still doubtful, and fears of a crash haunt central bankers. A central bank is just a bank, too, even if it has a feeling that it can pull itself up by its bootstraps because it prints the money itself. If loans don't return, the currency devalues, and the bank loses its reputation. This is a dangerous game. Only 5% of the monetary turnover has to do with actual goods. 95% are pure speculation. The bank's tools of control are inaccurate and protracted. The market is changing quickly. Often central banks can't check their credit for want of time. Because currencies are interconnected, the devaluation of American companies is causing worries.
I'm expecting that we're going to need a shock. And it is not just me who expect that this shock is likely. Paul Volcker, who is the previous chairman of Federal Reserve in the United States, has made a public statement saying there's a 75% chance for a dollar hard landing in the next few years. You have Robert Rubin, who is ex-secretary of the Treasury in America, who's currently chairman of Citibank, basically not the kind of person who has a dramatic interest in talking about alarmist things, is writing a paper in Brookings Institute basically saying the day of reckoning is coming.
These impressive mountains of money offer threatening perspectives. In 2006, when the Chinese central bank wanted to sell dollars, American and European central bankers started to perspire. Finally, it was revealed that the impressive amount had been a typing error. Former central banker Bernard Lietaer sees a monetary crash as a chance to refresh the system. This is needed urgently because currencies have developed fast in the last few years and now offer completely new possibilities.
Now, to give an idea that we're already at the end of the conventional national monies as a monopoly, just think about frequent flyer miles. Frequent flyer miles are a commercial purpose complementary currency. There are 14 trillion of them in circulation today, more than dollar bills or euro bills together. So it's not marginal. This is large scale.
In the last 15 years, the amount of currency has increased 20-fold.
Now, the more interesting ones are actually another domain, which is much smaller scale at this point, which are social purpose complementary currencies. Things about unemployment, local unemployment, currencies that are designed for learning, currencies designed for elderly care, all kinds of highly specialized purpose currencies that have a social objective. There are about 5,000 of them around the world now. So we're in the middle of a vast experimentation.
The former detective Heinz Rehlermeier now prints his own money.
Okay. Können wir es loslegen?
Ja, gleich.
The Dreiecker protects the region around Lörrach. It is one of 56 initiatives that are now starting all over Germany. Regional currency is free of interest. With this currency, speculation is impossible. Furthermore, it is bound to circulation. This means it is limited in the time during which it may be spent. It makes no sense to hoard this money. Establishing a new currency is hard work. The money inventors are confounded with barter trade, and the Federation demands high-quality standards.
Haben die schon die Fünfer fertig?
They must observe safety regulations and win partners for distribution. Interesting companies should join too, of course, so that we can shop with the currency. Margaret Kennedy is a shining example of these regional groups. She compares the quick spread of regional currency to the start of renewable energies.
Wir haben ja auch nicht ein Haus für
We don't have just one house for all purposes or one car for all purposes. How can we think that one type of money is good enough for all purposes and supports all purposes equally?
Virgil free money is a fine example of regional currency's success. This experiment led to the initiation of the Swiss Wehrfranken too. Here in Switzerland, a majority of medium-sized companies make large amounts of profit with this specialized currency. The Wehrbank encourages the stability of small businesses. We are at the annual World Congress of Regional Currencies in Weimar, where scientists and groups from many countries discuss alternative ideas about money. There is a spirit of international awakening.
Die hat einfach funktioniert, die ist umgelaufen. Und es gab ganz revolutionär zum ersten Mal eine Steuer auf Geld, wo die Leute, die freiwillig bezahlt haben, weil das ja sonst verfallen wäre.
In the future, money will become natural and serve both mankind and the environment. With regional currencies, the initiative, Regiogeld, hopes to strengthen domestic trade.
70,000 Chiemgauers are circulating, and we cooperate with 500 companies. We are now happy with the expanding number of members. We have 1,580 members and 1,000 consumers.
We have 15,000 in circulation, altogether 70,000 since last year.
We have about 9,000 Berliner in circulation and have another 35,000.
We try to stand up. Today we have 4,000 Hallertauer in circulation.
We are developing the E-region in cooperation and hope to come up with it next year.
Our news is that we have a cooperation with the Rheinstädter landmark.
In the first year, we have changed 70,000 euros to Wohlmetaller.
I think we're the first in the whole world who tried to put together time and money in one bill. You can buy the Stanthaler 100% with euro, but also 100% with time.
Man kann ihn aber auch mit einem Teil Zeit kaufen.
Money again comes with a moral dimension. The latest trend is the service-backed currency, which is paid for by private or professional work. They even help the poor to earn money by deeming their work worthy and honorable. In the future, investors will want to link themselves to banking software. creditors shall be paid more easily, and goods shall be imported from one region to another. It's a small fight against the spirit of profit maximization.
Man kann die Gesellschaft auch ändern und wartet bitte nicht.
We can change society, but don't wait for politics to find a way. We must force change by trying out new systems.
Mit neuen Ideen Änderungen herbeizuführen.
40 companies are united in the Dreiecke Regional Currency Group. Bit by bit, the German government considers regional currencies. But the regional currency movement is a global movement. There are green dollars, or time dollars, which you can get from time banks. Many towns in the United States have integrated this money into daily life. And in Brazil, it has been used to fight slums.
If you can see that the relationships, for example, between the intergenerational help is different for people who are paid in yen, which we have the case in Japan, and with the Furiakipu system, which is an elderly care currency, that the relationships between the people are different. And actually their money, Furiakipu, says that explicitly. It says caring relationship ticket in Japanese. And it's working. So if the relationships are different, just think about what we can do by rethinking our money.
Today, Bernard Liete advises governments in countries around the world who are interested in establishing such currencies. To him, dollars, euros, and yen are only a transitional solution. He is convinced that the step towards a global currency will decide our future.
One that does not exist is a global currency. That's nobody's national money. We have actually had the dollar as a global currency, but it's really definitely one country's national money. Just like the British pound played that role in the gold standard days in the 19th century. But there was one national money that became a global currency. I believe we're going to be needing a global currency that's nobody's national money.
Changing the nature of money requires courage. It is similar to the French Revolution. It means overthrowing a king who has been put in power by the grace of God. How deep will our misery be if we try? How strong are our enemies? A change wouldn't be as bad as experts' figures show. Even if half of the Germans were out of work by tomorrow and small businesses shrank to 1/4 of their current human resources, the gross national product would rise with an influx of just 5% more highly productive persons. This means that the German economy would continue to grow even if half of the Germans no longer went to work. But this also means that the economy can do without half of the Germans, or the English, the French, the Spanish, or the Americans. The solution for a healthy society is to let the apparently useless people participate in productivity. This can only work if they have access to the means of production, to money and affordable technologies. If we regard the economy as a whole, everything seems to be easy. We produce enough food for the whole world, and we have the technologies to provide everybody with non-polluting energies. Every single human being could enjoy happiness and fortune, but we must all rise to the challenge together.
Es gibt doch Hoffnung.
There is still hope. Justified hope. There's Porto Alegre. There's the new global civil society. There are resistance movements breaking through everywhere. They are not presenting a coherent, parallel world. This is not possible because of lack of time. But they present a brotherhood of the night. People who say, I don't want to live like this anymore, on a planet where my middle-class wealth is paid for by the death, by starvation, by the destruction of thousands of people every day. I don't want that. They mobilize, and in democracy there is no excuse for not mobilizing.
Inequality in the world can only be solved if we understand the spirit of money. As long as money is worth more than freedom or dignity, we will have envy and rivalry in place of charity. Money springs from private property. If we examine the concept of private property, we might find out that earth, air, water, nature with its resources, the planet we stand on, can hardly be seen as private property. Rather, these are gifts to the whole of humanity. It would be a major step forward to rethink law from this perspective. Marketing experts have discovered that the knowledge of mankind doubles every 4 to 7 years. Acknowledging the spirit of money will help us come to terms with the power of the worldly God and overthrow its throne.
Everything is easy, everything's cool. People live in peace, holidays and pools, sharing all the property, everyone's alright. Poverty, history, future shining bright. Water in the desert, fire in the snow. No more third world, just to go with the flow. Hey, and I could easily love you. Sorry, I'm so afraid of the ghost of my money that haunts me my nights and my days. Hey, and I could easily love you. Sorry, I'm so afraid of the ghost of my money that haunts me through my nights and my days. Oh, I could easily love you. Sorry, I'm so afraid of the ghost of my money that haunts me. The ghost of my money that haunts me.